Let's take a few minutes here and talk about a few Fibonacci analysis myths, either ones that are propagated on the internet or maybe ones that you're believing about yourself right now. And the first one is that, I have to be good at math. And I run into this a lot when I talk to students. They say, Josh, I sure would love to take your Fibonacci class, but I'm just not good with numbers. But here's the reality, and this is a very important principle to understand. Fibonacci analysis requires a balance of both the creative and the analytical mind. In fact, it's oftentimes very difficult to work with students that are strong in one or the other. If you have a balance, if you can see the life through a creative lens and see life through an analytical lens, you're going to do much better. And I would challenge my friends out there that are engineers. I have a father who's an engineer. That you might have to tap in a little bit more of your creative as we talk about fibs. And if I have friends who are artists, which I have a lot of them living in Nashville, I challenge them and say, you're going to have to get a little bit more specific in some of the areas and measurements that you're taking. So, fibs is not about math and it's not about numbers and geeking out. It's really a balance between creative and analytical thinking. Myth number 2, Fibonacci analysis is confusing and complicated. I get this a lot because, here's the reality. Fibs are not easy, but they're also not confusing and complicated either. It's like any skill. Practice is required, and it's almost dreadful. I make it look easy, whether I do it in Power Trader or Trading Labs or in some of the examples coming up here. But you have to understand, I've been looking at fibs for years and years and years, to the point where I almost see the ratios on the screen before I draw them, and you will get there too. But it's not going to happen in these 4 hours that we have together. It's going to take a little bit of practice, a little bit of determination to push through the challenge, and it's a skill. So if you could go into these sessions thinking that you're building a skill, you're going to be much better off. Myth number 3, and this is one of my favorite, this is just magic with numbers. Hocus pocus, voodoo, pixie dust, I've heard it all, right? Well, we spent some good time in lesson number 1 or part number 1 of this lesson talking about some of the science and perspective behind fibs, but I want to remind you right now that Fibonacci analysis in the financial markets is over 800 years old, and the foundational principles are a few thousand years old. This is the guiding principle in my mind. We don't question Dow theory for the most part. We don't question support and resistance, and we don't question candlesticks, even though they're a relative newcomer on the scene, right? Certainly in Western analysis. And I don't understand why people start questioning Fibonacci analysis and saying it's hocus pocus, because the truth is, fibs have been around hundreds of years. So this is a very well-tested, well-applied, well-understood form of analysis, and you can find a lot of confidence in what we're doing. Here's the 4th myth. You can simply drop a Fibonacci line or Fibonacci analysis on your chart and expect profits. They're going to just start pouring into your account. Here's the reality, and this is where a lot of students of Fibonacci analysis get bad information on the internet. You must allow for different market cycles. There's 3 market cycles out there. We're not going to talk a lot about them, but they're basically expanding, contracting, and symmetrical market cycles. And a simple drop of a Fibonacci line is going to get you close, but it's not going to be perfect. We have to allow for these expanding and contracting market conditions. So, while the Fibonacci ratio is theory, real life can get a little bit messy sometimes. It's organic and living and breathing. And here's a good example. In the first session, we talked a little bit about the relationship between the Fibonacci spiral and the Nautilus shell. The Nautilus shell is a utopian example of the Fibonacci spiral, right? Well, let's take a real look at this. So many Fibonacci analysts out there just, kind of proclaim this as though it's the gospel truth. But if we really stack a Fibonacci spiral on top of a Nautilus shell, you can see that even within the first 2 or 3 revolutions, it's already exceeding the boundaries. The theory is exceeding the boundaries of the reality, which is the Nautilus shell. The theory in the physical world, they aren't perfect, but they're certainly close. And you certainly could get an idea of what a Nautilus shell looks like by studying the Fibonacci spiral, couldn't you? And you could certainly define the Fibonacci spiral by studying the Nautilus shell. And the same thing's true in the stock market. But we need to be aware of this and set up some guardrails around ourselves so that we're not just taking theory from the book and trying to stamp it out on a bunch of charts and then getting frustrated with our result. Let's just understand what we're looking at as we go into it. That's all of our myths right now, but it does provide a great framework for you to understand how we're going to begin applying and understanding and learning Fibonacci ratios in the upcoming videos. So are you ready to get your hands dirty? In the next video, we're going to start drawing some Fibonacci ranges. Let's go.